Palantir Technologies could hit $50 by the end of next year. We're going to be talking about some of the key catalysts that have really been successful for this company and why PLTR has been a leading competitor in the AI forefront. Now, if you are new to Data Dispatch or a returning viewer, hit that like button. I can't thank you guys enough for supporting. Subscribe, and of course, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just collecting all the data and dispatching it to you. Now, one great successful thing that Palantir Technologies has done in 2023 that I think will continue into 2024 is really diversifying their clientele on a commercial perspective. And we saw this recently with a large partnership with PLTR in terms of trying to bring improvement from a data analytics perspective via their supply chain and basically bringing efficiency to the company. And it's a win-win situation, helping these different companies improve their efficiency and also bringing Palantir and utilizing Palantir's data softwares helps improve the revenue coming into PLTR. We've seen this with our AIP bootcamp and especially as they've dived into these different industries. Examples that we've seen so far in 2023 have been the National Health Service contract with the United Kingdom. That was a big one. And also collaborations with different firms like PwC, another large major firm. But what we've seen is ever since Q3 earnings were reported and we had that 20% basically increase in that last quarter and those earnings up basically 17% year over year, we saw Palantir being taken more seriously. And one of the big reasons we saw the seriousness coming behind PLTR was the fact that they hit that fourth quarter of GAAP profitability, which of course brings inclusion in the criteria for the S&P 500. Now those details are still yet to come, but with that being said, and with their actual financial report of having 3.28 billion on hand and only about 200 million in debt, they have a lot of cash. And with their debt to income ratio and with their debt to cash ratio, they have a lot of resources that they can pool into further development of their AIP platform. And that really brings us into next quarter, and I think why we could get a large influx into valuation behind Palantir. Now, next quarter is predicted to be February 13th. We're about to see earnings. That'll be only in about 2 months. Time's going to come, I think, before we know it. Time's moving fast these days, especially with the holidays. Now, earnings per share right now is sitting at 8 cents. One thing that we do have that's really been bullish for Palantir, especially for the last previous quarters that we saw in 2023, was the amount of bullish revisions that we had in terms of the last 90 days revisions. We've already had 9 in terms of these next quarter projections, and specifically sitting at that, like I said, earnings per share at 8 cents, that could be predicted to increase. In revenue at 602 million right now, that's the prediction, that could also be increased. And with that, this brings a lot of analysts and a lot of confidence behind institutional investors. And the way we see this and why we've seen this, the proof in the pudding, is the Zacks rank. This is a very highly reliable, basically, company that does a lot of predictions and analysts on all these different stocks. Palantir is rated as a #1 strong buy right now, even though they have a very high valuation. And one of the biggest criticisms is their decelerated growth rate in terms of a year-over-year perspective. Now, in terms of all that mumbo jumbo and what we're talking about, let's get down to the fine tooth comb. And that is their customer counts are continuing to increase 45% year over year right now. And this is predicted to continue to grow. At the end of the day, the success of a business is really customers coming to the table. And Palantir has exemplified that in all of their recent quarter reports. And especially with the next quarter, they're continuing to beat the bears and basically give them out of examples to basically bring bearish perspectives onto Palantir. And even though this stock is up over 178% year to date, I think it's important to know back in 2021, Palantir, that's only been traded for 3 days, had an all-time high of $39. So the fact that when we had a lot of craziness going into the stock market, people were on a buying frenzy. They didn't care what any stock was worth. They were just buying. And we saw that crash come in 2022. But nonetheless, Palantir has hit $39 before. Nearly right now, it's 50% of its all-time highs. And the changes that Palantir has made in terms of its profitability and also in terms of its financials and the large improvements in its business in terms of a general horizon, Palantir could, I think, easily get back to that $39 and, of course, continue on basically to that $50 mark. Now, the term of that and looking at Palantir, a lot of people have used this discounted basically cash flow as projections for revenue going into the following decade. And at 2025, what we do see right now is at about 3.21 billion in terms of revenue. And one thing about these projections, of course, it's always great that we can just run mathematics. However, they are projections, and we have to basically take into a fact that this compounded annual growth rate will remain stable. And that is one thing that we don't know for sure. Things could always be subject to change. However, from a global macroeconomic position, we do have the federal funds rate that is predicted to decrease into 2024. And we're also seeing possibility of those interest rate cuts, which can bring more bullish perspective and more buying pressure into the actual general stock market. And with the AI bubble that is continuing to grow, we could see more money pouring into these stocks. However, one of the biggest criticisms for Palantir that I don't think we can ignore is its valuation. It is at a very high premium right now in terms to the actual sales that it does bring in from a revenue perspective. But with that being said, Palantir is growing into that fair value, I think, on a daily basis. And as we see this stock, at the end of the day, these tech stocks and specifically AI stocks do typically trade at a high valuation. And Palantir is always traded as a high valuation. So I don't think this is basically a number one piece of evidence that we can criticize Palantir for if this is something that has typically been occurring across the industry. And considering that Palantir has been at $39 before, and that's back when Palantir basically just got into the public traded atmosphere. Remember that this company has only been publicly traded for about 3 years, but however, they have been in the game for 20. So this gives Palantir a really competitive advantage in the AI industry. And if we predict the market share, that is, a lot of analysts have many different metrics onto how much money is going to be coming into the AI industry. Market share that's going to be grabbing from various different industries coming into the AI, Palantir could possibly still have another hyper growth effect behind it, even though it's already been up 178% year to date. Now, one of the biggest catalysts and risks that there are out there for Palantir, I think it's important to know, even though we do take a bullish perspective for Palantir going into 2024, is a profit-taking cascade. With that high valuation, there could be any type of momentum or any type of moment with any type of large bearish media article on Palantir or bearish media outlook. Even if these quarter earnings, the next quarter earnings, we all of a sudden get a bad quarter, there could be a profit-taking cascade, and that could really drop its valuation quickly, even though there's not a lot of fundamental changes happening behind the company. That's where the speculation does come in Palantir. However, if you're looking into the next decade and even looking into 2030s, with that discounted, basically free cash flow metric, they're predicting revenues of nearly $10 billion. So this company, I think, early in its infancy still, even though it's been in a long game, still has a lot of room to grow. Look at its market cap, sitting around 30 to 40 billion right now. In terms of some of the other top blue chip stocks out there, it's got a long journey ahead of itself. Peace out, take care, and I'll catch you guys later. What do you think about Palantir? And leave it down in the comments.